Hi guys, so I thought I would do one of these technique reviews on bench press technique, basically talking about a cue I use that's called inner and outer circle that I use to coach my clients sometimes. Also something that I've used myself because I get a lot of questions about basically, bench press technique and especially how to get a big arch, how do you do that, and also how do you do your own lift off as well with keeping tension, get better in the bench. And I thought I would do something that what I have found to actually increase your arch without having to do tons of mobility things. So without doing all of these mobility stuff that people think, so you can just bend your back and get an arch, but actually get an arch that will make you stronger and that you can keep getting stronger in, an arch that works for you basically. So I thought I would do that. You can see my screen here. I'm gonna show some videos of two clients, both before and after, and also I'm gonna show you my own progress because I've always had a great mobility. My mobility isn't better now than it was in the beginning. I wasn't as good at creating tension in the beginning, and I'm gonna show you that to you so you can get an understanding of, well, maybe it can help you with your own bench press technique, find some cues, and also get some tips and tricks to do your own lift off and also increase your arch, but more so get a better bench press technique rather than just an arch. Because just an arch, let me just start with this. Having an arch is not necessarily going to make you stronger. It can make you stronger in the beginning, but then you will stagnate in your progress because if you don't have an arch where you actually create tension and use and engage a lot of muscles, mainly if you only try to arch, most likely since your ROM gets, your range of motion gets a little shorter in the beginning, so you will get stronger in the beginning, but then you will probably stagnate because you are actually not using as much muscle. And I've seen this a lot of times, but with myself, I've done this a lot myself, just trying to arch and realize, why the hell am I like 10 kilos stronger? 10 kilo weaker, 10 kilo weaker just by trying to arch more, and sessions where I don't think as much about arching but more about tension, and I can be 10 kilo stronger. And I've seen this happen with my clients, so I'm going to go through that. Something I can say, if you want high quality in your video, this probably isn't for you. If you want high value, this definitely is for you. Well, let's just get started and get right into it. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is I'm going to show you some videos, and these are basically before videos, and then I'm also going to show you some videos from more like today. But I'm going to start with my own actually. So these are two videos just so you can get an image of my progress with the art, or more so with the bench technique. I'm going to show you three videos. Or four, but this is me in the beginning. As you can see, I could definitely not do my own lift off, and you will be able to see that what I'm doing here is basically, you can see how far back I'm laying on the bench. My feet are basically out to the sides. I get a lift off that's thus far, very far, and you can see how I just basically drop the bar to my chest. This is terrible. So you can see as the spotter is actually like following me all the way, because basically what would happen if the weight get too heavy is I either would have gotten, if I would have been in a competition and I had to do a pause, I wouldn't have been able to do it, basically. And so that's one of my first. So here I had trained for like some months only in bench press, so it was a very new exercise to me. 50 kilo was a weight I could do pretty easily, pretty fast. Here's another one that I think is a little better, but you can see the same thing. I don't have any leg drive. You can see my knees are pointed forward. My leg drive is not driven towards the rack, but driven here to the sides. You can see that I do feel like I have tension in my legs. Definitely, I can feel that a lot, especially since my knees, I put my feet in a position where my knees go, it basically just gives you a sort of tension in your glutes a lot. So definitely used my glutes here, but it wasn't anything that actually helped in the lift because my leg drive was not towards the rack here. And same thing with the lift off. I had someone do the lift off for me, and I'm a big believer as well, that from own experience, it took me about 1.5 years to actually learn, once I started to always lift off by myself, to learn it correctly enough to be able to do it in competition. But always, when you can get a good lift off, first off, if you're competing in bench press, you won't have to handle having someone lift the bar off you, because it can go wrong in tons of way, and it's something that for most of the time you can't really control. So that's one thing that why I don't want to lift off, and that's why I came to the conclusion, because I was at nationals, got a bad lift off, and I felt like it threw me off, and it wasn't the lift off guy's fault. It was just that I didn't explain it as well as I should, and also because I had chose to have a lift off, basically. So that's just one thing. And also, when you do the lift off, I think a lot of people think of the lift off as just a way to get the bar out. But I think of the lift off as this is part of the lift. If you do a correct lift off, you will get more tension from it, and it will increase your bench, not the opposite. So that's something that I personally believe. So lift off here, just not great. Also, you can see the same thing. There's more, so you can see there this bench is a little bit better, but still, you can see each time I go down, you can see my legs go here. So each time the bar reaches, my entire body travels to the left instead of staying upright to the right. So that's one thing. And here's another bench press from me a little later on. So basically, this is here I've had gotten an arch. First thing, still have a lift off, but not as big a lift off. I also got a better arch here, but you can still see I do not use leg drive. First, like clue of this is that here, just look at this. This, when I get the lift off, this is where my feet are, and then when I have it, you see that I just move my feet. If you move your feet, you're gonna lose leg tension, basically. So don't move your feet. This is why I lose tension. Also, I put them too far back. If I would have put them here in the beginning, that would have been great. Also, probably should have had my feet a little bit further down, maybe tilt my heels in a little bit and to get more tension. But basically, it's like I'm two parts here. This is one part and this is one part. So this was definitely this actually was a PB for me, definitely an increase in my bench, but still not tension. Here and before, I just had, because of some mobility, I just had an arch. I have a higher arch now, I think, but I have more tension, and that's why my bench has increased. I was actually stuck at this weight for a long time, around 80 kilos, and didn't increase because my tension just didn't get any better. All right, and here you can see my most recent bench, not from a session, but from a competition where I've done 120 kilos in training before, but my technique has never been consistent. It hasn't been the best. Has been my most consistent training block for bench, and that's why I actually made it in competition. This is 119 kilos, so a lot more, but I also had time to work. What I just want to touch on here, what's the good part about this, is you can see I do lift off by myself, and what you can see here, look at my elbows, the range of motion in my lift off is really short. You can see, look at my feet, you can look at my glutes when I put my butt down. You see that it's very short. Also, why I'm wiggling, that wiggly kind of feeling, and that's just me sort of actually just taking in air, basically. So that's me taking in air. That's why I have this sort of wiggly feeling thingy that you can see. But if you just look here, you can see that I didn't move my feet, I didn't move my butt, and here I have a lot more tension, which is why I actually managed this weight, even though this lift off actually wasn't great. And my other 2 attempts before was a lot better. So that's just some of my bench progress. I want to touch on some of my clients, and that's when I'm going to start about how to do your own lift off and also get a better arch aside from doing mobility. So mobility is a good thing to actually do if you want to be able to find different muscles and actually just get mobility in your upper back. That's going to be a good key factor for your bench press, but it isn't really necessary to get an efficient arch. And an efficient arch is basically an arch that it's natural to you, where you can push weight, keep tension, and actually like grind out a lift with sufficient technique. So having a big arch is not necessarily the best thing, even though we are in a sport where we want to lift as much as possible, because we actually want good technique, and that's the key factor. Some people will have good technique but will have a huge arch. Some people will have a huge arch with terrible technique, and some people will have a wonderful, absolutely stunning technique without a big arch at all. So that's something that's very individual, and you can increase your arch when you have a good technique if you want by doing some mobility, but that's not what I would focus on primarily. I would more so focus on actually increasing the technique, or just getting a better and more tight technique. And that's why I like to think of an inner and an outer circle, and I'm going to show it with you. But first, let's just look at some clients. So this is Emma, and we've been working since, I think, the beginning of this year, so since January. And you're gonna see here is her bench before. So this is the first session on my program that she did, and you can see, just look here, you can see she got a little bit of arch here, as you can see, and not the like super huge, but she got some arch, definitely. Emma here is really good at bench press naturally. She started working with me, she hasn't had to relearn an entire bench press, that's for sure. So, but you can see it's not a lot of arch and there's not too much tension. Here, this is a feet up bench that she actually did just before, and you can see here that she actually doesn't have her feet on the floor on this one, so this is a variation. But what you will be able to see is just that basically, wait, all right, here we go. So you can just see that her arch is a bit better here. And not just like, it's not only that her arch is better, but her tension is better. What you can see is she's working more so in her upper back here. She can stabilize through her upper back. You can see that her neck is more so onto the bench, and which just makes her being able to use what I call an inner circle. And I'm going to explain this in a bit. But this is just a massive improvement technique-wise, and also weight-wise, she's made a lot of improvements as well. So another video I want to show you is Minal, and Minal as well. She already had a pretty good bench when we started working, but she's also increased a lot. You will see here that her lift off is pretty far. She does her lift the bar off far out, and she also moves her feet a lot, and then she tries to take her. You can see there's just a lot of things sort of going on before actually getting to the lift, and this is what I mean by the lift off. So the weight is really easy, and the bar moves fine, but you can get a lot more tension. This was just recently, and she did 70 kilos in her last competition, and she's definitely stronger for more. You can see that this is an entire other lift. You can't see the lift off here in this video, but basically her lift off nowadays is like this far. Literally, it's just super tiny. And when you have a lift off where the lift off super small, you will reserve energy, the weight will feel lighter in your hands, and also you will create tension, like I've spoken about in the beginning here. And so you can just see here, every time also in between her repetitions, you can see that she starts to she takes a lot of air, she takes a breath in, and you can see how her legs and her upper back moves towards the rack just a little bit. And this kind of movement is okay. It's the movement that goes to the left, like away from the rack, that we don't want, but any movement that moves towards the rack without anything lifting off the bench, but just to enhance basically the tension in your upper back, making sure you can use your lower traps, your shoulder blades, and also your lats correctly. So what do I talk about with the inner and outer circle? I'm going to show you. So this is what I mean by the inner and outer circle. I'm sorry, this is in Swedish, but I think you will understand it as either way, because I will go through it. But basically here, so this is what I mean about an inner and outer circle. I'm also going to show you this in the bench press videos and how you can actually think of this. Let me just use my pen. So something you can see here is, here's an explanation. So if you're looking at this in Swedish, read this, it can help. But otherwise, basically, there's a lot of arrows in this picture, and this is all basically where I think that you should keep your force production. So where you want your force production in the bench press to go. Here, what I mean is you want to press all your weight down on your neck. So that's one arrow. And we're going to start with the outer circle that you can see that I've drawn here. And the outer circle, basically, what this means is that you want to push your feet to the floor. Why? Because it will create stability and also increase your leg drive. Also, you want to press your knees towards the rack, basically keeping your quads tight, engaging them, and pressing them all the way to the rack. And this is something I think a lot of people forget, but you don't necessarily have to think about the knees pushing towards the rack, but it's something that can help to engage your quads and also get the movement when you get to the rack and not away from the rack, like I spoke about earlier. Also, you want to get your hips going as well towards the rack, as well with towards your upper back here. And by doing this with keeping your pressing down on your neck, pressing down your feet, pressing your knees and your hips, also your glutes, of course, but that's more of the inner circle, and that will help make sure that your chest goes up. So you want to keep your chest high, basically engaging your lats, your upper back, and keeping your chest high is also something that will happen. If you look at all of these arrows and you point them out, you will basically get an outer circle. That's what I mean. So all of these arrows with the neck, chest high, hips high, also keep pushing your knees toward the racks, pushing with your feet down, and also keeping all of your leg drive towards the rack. All of this will make sure that you work as one unit. One thing we don't like is when we have two circles and one is the upper back and one is the legs, because then you're not working as one unit, and you want as much power and force production as you possibly can, which can help when you use your entire body as one unit. So just keeping your quads and legs tight here and then doing the bench press with your upper back is not going to help you to use the entire force that you could have done. So that's why I like to think of the outer circle. And this is really important. But also, what is the actual point about the outer circle or the outer circle? So the outer circle also keeps your inner circle in place. By doing all of these things in the outer circle, it keeps your inner circle in position. And your inner circle here is basically what I think of as shoulders, shoulder blades towards your butt. So think of your shoulder blades and your shoulders and also your lower traps and lats like they are going to touch your glutes. So think of your entire upper body is supposed to be pulled towards your glutes. And here's where the mobility part comes in, because if you don't have a lot of mobility, you won't be able to press down on your neck. And if you can't press down on your neck, you're not going to be able to get the feeling of pulling your shoulder and shoulder blades efficiently towards your glutes. So this does not mean that your arch will have to be super high, but that you will need a little one. And also, if you can feel like you can push your neck down to the bench, then I would advise some mobility exercises. For example, super easy, the cat stretch, where you stand on the floor on all fours, you just push the floor out and actually just pull your shoulder blades apart, just push it up and feel that stretch where your shoulder blades is pushed apart. And do, like I used to say, like just for a warm up or mobility, just doing it sometimes is a very easy one, and it doesn't work for everyone, of course, but a very easy one that you could do like 10 reps, 3 sets, basically would be super easy to just do and engage either before or after a bench session, or also like a mobility routine that you do every day, just to actually make sure that you can press down on your neck, because that will be a key to press down on your neck. So that's that. But you basically just want your shoulders and your entire upper body to basically just be pulled down towards your glutes. This is the only part that you want to go away from the rack. Everything else you want to go towards the rack, okay? But then, like I said, you want to push your knees and your hips high and your knees towards the rack. You also want basically your glutes. You don't necessarily want them to go to the rack, but you want your glutes to be pulled towards your upper body. So basically feeling like your shoulder blades, your lower traps, your lats, and your shoulders, basically your upper back meets your glutes in the middle. All right. So that means, and this is why you see like people with a huge arch there on and with a lot of mobility, like me, for example, and you see them. They're basically like sitting on their more so on their lower end of their glutes and on their hamstrings. And you can see how it's basically like just a bow like this, and that's what you should aim for, but not basically by bending your back, because a lot of people can bend your back, but the key here is that you do it by tension. You pull your shoulder blades together and down, and you pull your shoulder together and down, engaging those lower traps a lot, engaging your lats, feeling like it stabilizes and goes through your glutes, as well with keeping your glutes tight in contact with the outer circle, the upper end of the outer circle, keeping your knees towards the rack and all of that. So that's why I call it, because your shoulder blades go here and your glutes, they go there. That's why we have an inner circle. So this is the inner circle, and then you have the outer circle, keeping that in place. The inner circle is the most important part, and when you do, for example, like feet up bench, I would say that this is the kind of variation where you only work the inner circle, and that's why I had Emma's feet up bench here. So in a feet up bench, you actually remove the leg drive, but you still want to keep your glutes tight here in order to efficiently train the inner circle. Because if your inner circle is really, really tight and strong, you could get away with, for example, some things like a bad harder bench, for example, or worse leg drive. If you have a bad session, for example, you can still have a very intact bench technique. And then when you have just can get both, that's when you're going to be rock solid. So that's something I want to address on, that I think is basically a key towards also creating tension of your bench. But it's very important that you don't lift off the bar and then try to do this. How you get the inner circle working and the outer circle working is extremely important to get during the lift off. So you have to get this during the lift off. So I'm gonna walk you through that. But so we're gonna watch this a bit. So that's what the technique I'm looking at here. And for example, let's look at Minal's hair before we started working together, or the first week actually. You can see here that she has to lift off, and she tries to find the tension afterwards here. So what will happen, as you can see, is that the knees are basically pointing a bit down. Her feet are so far under the bench that she can't efficiently get a leg drive here, and if she can't really get her glutes going to her shoulder blades, which basically makes the inner circle unavailable. And then, as we don't have the complete leg drive here, even though she takes a lot of air and would be able to get her chest up, she's mostly gonna work more of her the upper end, the front shoulders, instead of working as a unit. And so both of those circles are a little bit gone. Let's look at her newer video here, and you can see a complete difference in this as well. So just look here, you can see that she's pressing down on her neck here, and you can see sort of a little bit of a C, or the right end of a parenthesis. And I don't know if I explained that right, but basically like a sort of like a C here, but a turnaround C. So that's a clue that she's actually getting maximum tension here to get her chest higher. So you can see her feet here, they're still a bit under the bench, but you can see that they all push here. And that's why when you see her moving here, you can see that before every session, her entire body pulls towards the rack, just completing that outer circle to make sure the inner circle can stay in place the entire repetition. And if we look at Emma's here, when she don't have the outer circle because she's doing a feet up bench, you can as well see that Here is the lift off that you see, and this is something when you do a lift off, even though you have feet up bench, I would always recommend. I see a lot of people do this. I have a lot of clients that do it in the beginning as well. It's very normal, but when you have feet up bench, that you don't actually keep your feet in the floor and then put your feet up. By doing that, by just doing a regular lift up with your feet on the floor and then putting them on the bench, you will be able to just enhance that inner circle. And there's different reasons you can train a feet up bench. Why I usually do it for the most part is to use the inner circle to train it and make it stronger. So that's something that we do a lot. And then I want you to actually be able to enhance it in the lift off so that you can keep it, because otherwise you're not going to find it through all of the sets, and you're just more so going to be working on just a longer range of motion, and you can still have a longer range of motion here. So as you can see, she's trying to push down on her neck. You can see here that there's a lot more engagement here, and you see that she is actually keeping her glutes tight here to actually meet the bar. You can see that she's very slow here down, and she's easy and fast up. And this is about the breath. So I'm going to talk about that in the end, also about the how to breathe during the bench press. But you can just see here that here she's using the inner circle a lot more. The one thing that we are working on more is to actually try here in the feet up bench to also see that movement when you actually go like higher and meet the bar. But I'm gonna watch and give you one more example, and that's gonna be for example, for my bench press here, my old bench press from before as well, as I've struggled with this a lot before as well. You can see here that I'm two parts. I spoke about this in the beginning. There's two parts. I have a high arch, but this is just me being bent. It's like a straight wall here in between my legs and my upper back. It's not like I'm actually getting these to my glutes, but I am probably getting some of my shoulder engagement to my glutes, but I'm not getting my glutes efficiently towards my upper back, enhancing that, making sure my actual chest gets higher. So just another example, trying to find a video. I went to my Instagram and basically just because that's where I have it on my computer. So here I'm gonna watch some more of the bench press here, and you can see here I am actually moving my feet, which is not the best. But when you're gliding your feet, it's better than actually moving your feet if you're gliding them a bit out. Here, what you can see is more so that I have more of a actual, if you just pause here, actual inner circle. You will basically see that I'm pressing down on my neck. My shoulder blades here are going more so to my glutes, and my glutes are going back. And sometimes when you see this from when you have an excellent angle to actually see this is to film right from the side and sort of underneath, so you can see your upper back and the muscles in your upper back working. If you get that C, you know you're on the right track. So try to look at that turn around C basically. So that's one cue. So just in order to show you the lift off, and what I mean here is basically some easy and fast cues for your lift off is to always, when you do your lift off, is to try to pull yourself back from the bar a little bit. You don't have to go all the way down away from the rack like on straight arms. Just go back a little bit so that you can actually lay on your neck and feel like you're laying down on your neck, keeping that tension. And because by laying on your neck, you will feel the feeling that your shoulder blades will basically travel down underneath your chest. So that's why you always want to keep all of your weight on your neck. Go up on your toes and push your glutes and hips up in the air as far as you can. Basically, all of your weight of your entire body, you want it to go onto your neck. Also, make sure to have a grip that you find is working for you, but also keep your pinky down just to get a good grip on the bar. What you can see here is then after I've gone down away from the bench, I do actually glide. And the key here is to glide on your neck when you glide back. Not doing this too fast, but just gliding on your back, making sure your shoulder blades are already together, you have them in tension, you are keeping them already pulled towards the glutes. Here, you want something that's very important is that if you have a real rack, you have it's one of those like sliders. Basically, you could have the bar laying towards the rack here, but you could also have it laying towards towards the hook. And I want you to keep it close to that hook. That's very important because you want your lift offs to be as short as possible and just a elbow movement. So going here, you can see that once I got in position, and how I can find position is basically when I feel like the bar is on the lower end of when I push my glutes up. The bar will be on the lower end of my sports bra. So that's how I know that I'm in the position where I'm not too far off the bench, so that I will actually always hit the hooks and the rack when I'm doing my bench press, but also to know that I'm not too far away from the rack so that I will have to pull the bar out pretty far and lose tension. So that's something very important. What I'm doing here when I'm doing the lift off is that I will turn my elbows out to the sides. So basically just turn them out a little bit to the sides and then just go. Just an elbow movement. Just push straight up, just a little bit forward. Like to think of it as this kind of movement, but shorter. So half of this, basically. Just that kind of movement going straight up. And then when you do this, this is where it becomes important. I want you to take one breath before lifting the bar off. And then when you got the bar off, this is something that helps at least and can help a lot of people, is to always actually just squeeze out a little bit of air. Do it with pursed lips. So shh. By doing this, and do keep pushing and squeezing out a little bit of air all the time until your butt is down on the bench. So do this kind of slowly. You can see that this looks fast for me, but start very slowly and then increase the speed by time, because you will be able to go and do it a lot faster in time when you find the tension. But in the beginning, it's going to be hard to find that tension, so then do it really slowly to just maintain. And also, when you put your glutes down on the bench, try to keep your hips as high as possible. Now I'm done. I'm still squeezing that last bit of air out until I feel that my shoulder blades have gotten to my glutes and my glutes here. So when I feel like this inner circle is complete, that's when I stop squeezing out air, and instead I squeeze in new air through pursed lips, and then I start to lift. And I think this is a very important sort of breathing circle that you can do to always take one breath before the lift off. Squeeze out air once you had the bar out and putting down your glutes. Squeeze it all until you have found that your inner and outer circle is intact when you're in position. When you're in position, then you can squeeze in your new air. So basically, just take one breath of air before, then squeeze it out, pursed lips, just to get a little bit out of the time. You want to make sure that your tension gets better during this time. When you're completely in position, outer and inner circle contact, then you take a last breath, but you squeeze it in, pursed lips, and then you lower the bar. And doing this and not stressing, you don't actually have to do like breath through every single rep, especially if you have like tens. But to do it in the beginning is very, very important, to actually just also keeping patient and making sure that you're in position, not stressing your position out, but making sure you're actually in position. So that's something that you definitely can do and can think of. So here I just go down, and then I also squeeze out air in the way up, because I like to do it, and I know it's helpful for a lot of people as well. So that's just some things that both you have the inner and outer circle, you have the air, and also one stretch that you can use, pressing down on your neck. If you can't press down on your neck, probably you need mobility. You can watch this again. If you have any questions, you can just reach out to me. And like I said, high value, low quality. I hope if you watch this, it help you and that you feel like inspired to bench and have some ideas, and update me on how it went, how it helped you. And you can always give me new ideas if this is something you would want me to do for example, deadlift, sumo deadlift, squat, or any other exercise or anything else you like that could help you. Have a great day. Bye.